Welcome to another video. So today we're going to be checking out localization. As you can see, we've just changed the language and we'll do so again. We'll go through Japanese, Korean, Russian. Some of the characters are a bit long, but just know that that is an option. So localization is a big topic and a pretty hard one to get right. For one, you need good translations. For two, it is the technological hurdle in order to localize your game. That is a bit of a thing because there are a few systems involved, but we're going to try to crack that, get you understanding how to go about it. This is not a be-all, end-all tutorial of how to do it. This is one way. I don't have perfect answers everywhere, but I try my best. We are learning this together, if anything. So we have this language picker over here. We have the in-editor picker that Unity provides us. Now, all this is possible with the localization package. If you go to Package Manager and you bring up localization, I'm using 1.57. Just install whichever's the latest. You will more or less be doing, hopefully, kind of the same. Now, importantly, we are doing localization using the TextMesh Pro. We're not using Unity's UI Toolkit. So if you're looking for the UI Toolkit implementation, unfortunately, this tutorial doesn't really have anything for you. So just so we are all ready and have our expectations managed. Right, so localization, you do need a few things. For one, you're going to need font, you're going to need translations, and you're going to need to somehow change your assets to be able to use the localized version of the text or even assets themselves. Now, when we install the localization package, you'll have the asset management, localization, tables, scene controls. We are looking at the localization tables. Yours will look empty. Mine has got all of the translations in this for one of the tables that I was last looking at. What you will do is essentially create a new table collection, and then you're going to tick the locales. Now, you probably don't have any of these yet. So we'll get to how to set that up in just a moment. What you will do is set up the name. We're going to use a string collection. We're not going to use an asset table. You can change the various textures and models for different languages if you wanted to. That's what the asset table collection is. For now, we're just worried about strings and text, so we just want to be able to adjust that. So give your table a name. If I called mine achievements, I already have one ready for you. You'll then just hit create. And that will create the table. Save it somewhere sensible. I recommend maybe something like localization. Let's see if I can find it up here. Here we go. Maybe something like localization and tables might be a reasonable way to sort it out. So a table has got a key and values. The key is what you're going to be using in your components to reference the row. Now, for every single language that you had ticked for the table, in this case, my current table that I have selected is my main menu UI. I've got other tables for various things. So let's go back to that. And you can see main menu beginner, main menu intermediate, expert, co-op, customize. I've already set this up. I will show you sort of a little bit on a good way to go about that a little bit later. And then we've got the values corresponding to the locale that you have selected in your game. And that is what these are going to be showing up in your text. Now, how do we actually then set up our project settings to be able to show those locales for the table? in localization in your project settings. So that's edit, project settings, localization. You can see available locales. I have these as my default. I can add another locale, tick, select, or you could select all if you want, and then hit add locale. It'll then populate here. Don't worry too much about the rest. We're keeping it as default. There are the Unity documentation that goes into a bit more detail, what the ACID database, string database is, how to use the locale selector, the command line argument, or whether it's system specific. There is a lot that we're not really going to dive into because we want to get you to localization as quick as possible in a sensible way. Once you have done with this, you will have those localization options available in your localization table when you're going to create one. So that's your table of localization. Sorry, let's go window, asset management. So you can add rows. Let's go to the very last. You can add a new entry, put in a key, and then put in all the localizations for that key. Now, that is the manual way. What you could do is import a CSV, or if you already have a table ready, you can use CSV merge and it'll just merge the differences. Just keep that in mind when you are overriding with the new table. It actually adds. So if we're 6 of 6 pages and we add another, or we import a CSV, it will make it 12 out of 12 if it's that same table. If we merge, it will just change the differences. Keep that in mind. Now, that is the easiest way to go about it. Importantly, the header in your CSV has to be these headers corresponding to your table over here. And then it will import one-to-one, no problems whatsoever. In fact, Unity does a really good job at even having all the characters available so that you can see the localization without missing font characters, which is great. So the next step is, how do we actually set up a text box to use localization? This is my Learn to Play menu item, and its Text Mesh Pro component is this Text Mesh Pro. You can see Learn to Play. This is what you would normally have in there. Now, with Text Mesh Pro, you now have, hold on, let me slide this aside because it's going to open up to the side. You can hit this little epsilon at the top right of the Text Mesh Pro and go to localize. When you click localize, it is going to add, sorry, let me close that, a localized string event. Now, it has added a duplicate because I've already done this before, but let's just use this as a fresh example. Because this is Learn to Play, we need to look at the string table that we had created. I know that somewhere in there is Learn to Play, and you can see there it is. We've got Learn to Play, and it is the correct English translation. I know that the translation in English is the one that I want, therefore the rest will be corresponding. Now, that is the setup. How do we actually get it to then display? Now, remember, there was that little selector in play mode. We're just going to skip saving any of that. The little selector at the top right that we can now pick the localization. Now, the great thing is that it will do a key value search whenever there is a localization change event. And that is what Text Mesh Pro is doing. It is listening for that event with that component, and it is reading for, hey, is my locale, the current locale displayed? No? Okay, cool. Load the corresponding locale. And that is exactly what it's doing. So that's pretty much more or less how you get it to display. Now comes the much bigger part of this whole thing, which is essentially trying to get the font in. Now the font is a bit of a beast by itself, but let's go through this step by step. In order for text to display in various characters, in all these various characters, you need to have a font associated with that, because the font has got all the characters and glyphs that are representative of that language. Here are a few things to note. That if you're currently considering localization and you are very far down into your project and you're thinking, oh no, the font that I've selected does not have other languages for that style. How do I go about this? Now, the way to go about this, I believe, is to use the fallback font method. What that is whenever you have a font, you can assign a fallback to it. In this case, you can see that my Text Mesh Pro, I'm using the Modern DOS 9x16, and in my localization, there's this enable fallback. I'm using use project settings. You can use use fallback. If you go with use fallback, in your actual font, you will have to have a set of fallback assets assigned to it as various other fonts. Essentially, you would hit that, you would drag one of the other things into it, the other font into it, and now whenever it is looking through this font, so this is the English font, and it is looking for, say I've got Japanese translation on, very conveniently, I've placed the Japanese font asset as the fallback. It will say, hey, okay, I did not find any glyphs in the English font. I will now start looking through each and every fallback font. You can add as many as you want, and I will look for the glyph within it. So that is what we're doing. Now you can do it at the font level, or you can do it at a global level, and that is what the use project settings is. If we go to edit project settings and we bring up the Text Mesh Pro settings, because this is a Text Mesh Pro object, it has got fallback font assets, and you can put all your different language fonts over here. So it does not matter from here on, as long as you've got use project settings, which is the default for localized string event. No matter what font you use here, if the glyph is not found there, it will then look through that entire list we just saw in the fallback in order to then present the characters to whoever is playing your game. Now, how do we actually get font in here? Well, I have got for you Google Fonts. If you go to Google Fonts, a great one is Nodo Sans, because it comes in various languages. It's got a lot of languages, and this is what you do want when you are looking for fonts, because your font needs to be able to have the glyphs to represent the various languages that you intend to localize to. Now, if it does not, you can use different fonts. That's completely fine. In fact, that is exactly what I am doing. I am using Modern DOS and I am using Nodo Sans as the backup, because Nodo Sans has got the various languages that I require, and it works decently close to my game that I'm building over here. So yeah, Nodo Sans is really good for it. You're simply going to hit get font and then download the font. There is also the Japanese So you may have already seen here, I've actually added Japanese as well. So you can search Noto Sans Japanese, but ideally make sure to look for font that you can use commercially in your title so that you don't have to worry about licensing issues and going through that ordeal. Download it, save it, and we are then going to add it to our fonts list. When you do import it into Unity, it is still not usable. It appears as this. You can see this is my imported font because it has got the import settings. Now I need to generate a font for Unity to actually use because Unity does not know how to use just straight pulled font. In this case, since we're using TextMesh Pro, we're going to go to Window, TextMesh Pro, Font Asset Creator. And this is where you're going to generate your font. So let's go Noto Sans Bold. We are just going to say we're going standard ASCII. We're going to keep this auto sizing optimum is what you want to use for a release title. Fast is if you're just in testing. It is the packaging algorithm for the glyphs. I just keep it as optimum. I don't have any wait time when generating fonts, which is fine. But if you're generating a huge font atlas that can be dictated by this, it will take a very long time. So just keep note that you do have fast and optimum, but always go with optimum whenever you are about to release your game. Make sure it's generated as that. Then you get to select your character sets once you've set up your atlas resolution. I keep 1024, that's great, that's fine, and that works really well for most cases. Feel free to go up or down as you see fit. Character set. Now this is actually, if we hit generate, it is pulling these characters from the font. Now the font has got a whole bunch of characters in different languages, depending on which font you went for. It has got, say, extended characters, so we can generate these, and you can see, okay, yep, this is for, you've got Greek, you've got a few other interesting ones, especially in like the Eastern European or the Nordic region. Some of those characters exist here, and you do have a whole bunch of other ones. Let's check out another interesting example using my Japanese font. So you would expect that when you're selecting ASCII or one of these others, I'm looking for Japanese characters or glyphs, but none of these are. They don't exist in the standard selection, no matter which one you choose. What you do have to do, now there are two ways to go about it. There is the Unicode hex range. Now the Unicode hex range is something that you can, I'd say you can Google it. I can show you right here. This is hiragana. You can see it has got the Unicode hex range of 340 to 309F. That's 96 code points, so 90, or rather 89 characters, 2 common, 2 inherited. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. I think there is a website for Unicode characters of all the languages that you can look up. Feel free to look for that. It might just take a little bit of Googling. But yeah, once you have those Unicode characters, let's see if I can, there we go. So this is Japanese, or the popular ones. However, it does not include some very core characters. Now, this is katakana and hiragana, I believe, and a few of the other symbology, but it is not encompassing of all the characters. In fact, when you do a translation, say using Google Translate, that's what I've used, by the way. I'll get to sort of the translation part a little bit later, but if you use a translation, go to Google Translate, you generate these characters, you then save the font, save it as your asset, so that you can finally use it in Unity. You may realize that you'll have a lot of large square, like it sort of looks like this is just an empty square box without the line. Whenever it cannot find a character, that's what it will show. just keep that in mind. Those aren't the actual characters. That is actually it telling you there's an error. I cannot find the character. Here is an empty square box. So using this method will not get you all the characters. What I did find that does work is a characters from file. So what this does is you give it a file with a whole bunch of characters, and it will look within its font. So in this case, I'm going with my Japanese character set. It'll look inside my font, and it will give me all the characters that I need in order to have the font display those glyphs. Because actually, turns out I've learned that there are about 25,000 characters in Japanese alone, more than that even. And having that as a font file is not reasonable. So let's just get the subset of characters that we're actually using in our translations in order to make use of it. Now, how do we actually find out those characters? Remember, we had the localization tables. Turns out, once you have all your localizations, you can export the character set. When you export the character set, in my case, what I did, I selected none, and then I went through each table and just said, okay, I just want the Japanese characters or the Japanese translation, that column, for each of my tables. And you then export it and save it as a character set. You can see it has looked at every character in all the translations, compacted it into a neat little single line character set, and then I extract just the font for that character set to be represented in the game. Now, the only thing is that if your localization is changing often enough, you will have missing characters. As you change the translations, you've got new symbols or new glyphs coming in, and because there are new glyphs coming in, you're going to be ending up with missing characters until you regenerate this character set file and then regenerate the font associated with that character set or with that locale against the new character file. So there is that. So just know that if you are still in the process of a lot of translation changes, accept that there will be missing characters and then do one big sweep at the very end so you're not repeating yourself. Now you can set up an automated way to do this. I have not. There is systems out there that exist, or you may come up with your own custom solution. I'll be really glad to see what your thoughts are in the comments below as to how you went about localization, especially dealing with fonts. Now, that is for the most part the brunt of it. I'm going to quickly show you how to do this little picker that we have over here. It is very straightforward, and how we can deal with dynamic items as well. So we have just a struct that is the language options that has a locale and a native name. This is purely going to be set up in the inspector. I will show you what that looks like over here. This is the language selector for this guy. It has got a reference to the dropdown. It's got the template and the item. We only do this because we're just doing some resizing because our actual dropdown expands based on the number of locales we have, and we're just doing that dynamically. So you don't really need that. The main thing is just we've got these language options, like I said, that we're doing manually over here. We're setting a locale code and its native name. I'll get back to what the native name is in just a moment. So the language selector, we have the string is mainly just so that we can do some saving and some loading. We're going to compute the height. we are going to listen to the change event. Because it's a dropdown, we're just going to add a value change to it that is going to say, hey, if you have a new value, let's assign the locale to it. So on language changed, we have the index of the item that we have selected. We're going to have a look at the language options. We're going to pass in the actual change language to it. So the locale code will be passed in. We're going to look at all available locales. We're going to find the locale code against the identifier code of our locale. If it's valid, we're then going to assign it, and we're just going to return true if it was successful, or false if it was not. Mainly because we're then going to be just saving to player prefs the actual change, that the next time your player comes into the game and loads up for the first time, or the second time rather, onwards, the preferences are saved and they don't have to change that every time. Then we have just some loading of the saved language. It's very simple, and yeah, once you have done that, all you do is assign the transforms and apply the locale changes. Now, the language options, the reason we have the native name here is because we're overriding our translation. The reason is, I'll show you. Let me hit play. We want to always present the language options in the language, in the translation of the actual native language. So English is in English, but you can see this does not say Spanish. That does not say Chinese. That does not say Japanese or Korean. It says Japanese in the native language, so that person of that native speaking language can recognize it and select it. That is why we are overriding it with our own native names, because typically when you use the localization table, it will assign essentially everything in that row for the desired key. But we are looking at, say, in this case, if it were English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, it would be English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. We're only using this diagonal and we're ignoring everything else in that row, and we want to override that. So I believe it is important for someone to recognize their own language in their own symbology, glyphs, characters, so that they can select it appropriately, regardless whether we are in, this is all Spanish, but the actual language is in its native characters. That's what we're doing. Nice and simple. Yeah, so that is how you deal with the picker. The last thing is, how do you deal with dynamic items? That means TextMesh Pro will adjust the language for as long as it is assigned. However, say you've got dynamic changing items, or let's just go to English, go to say run modifiers. You can see all these items actually do not have a localized string assigned to it. Hold on, let's go text. Is that the text? TextMesh Pro. You can see there is no localized text assigned to this because I'm dynamically generating this. In order to apply the localization to it, what I've done is hooked onto the localization change event. So localization settings dot selected locale change. Whenever we change, all I'm doing is regenerating this whole list. And this whole list will then regenerate everything that is within it. Now, internally, every object, its own name already has a localized version of that name that I've set up completely separate. So over here, you can sort of see these are the achievements. Let's see, do I have those modifiers somewhere? Okay, let's just go with the, here we go, the modifiers. So avoidance that we looked at. You can see that it has got its own localized display name. So this localized string key, it looks oddly familiar to the one we added to TextMesh Pro. And that is exactly it. It is just a component. It is a class that you can add to any single item. And that's all it is. Once you've added the localized string, over here, localized string, you can then serialize it within your within the inspector and set it up there. So now your data has got localization attached to it, but your UI doesn't need to worry about localization on its actual text. Once it reaches for the data, it looks within the data, gets the localization. If there is one, you have to set it up, and generates it that way. So all I'm doing is simply listening for the event and then assigning the and regenerating the list when the localization changes, and let TextMesh Pro and the localized string handle all the changes that you see. So that's all there is. I say that's all there is. This is a bit of a big topic. I hope you have no questions. Would be ideal. But please do leave a comment below if you do. I'd love to hear about what your take is. How do you go about localization? I think the very important thing is localize as late as possible, because you will be regenerating a lot of the localization tables and fonts and character sets. And it's just so that you can reduce that workload, because it is a bit repetitive unless you have automated it. If you have, great, go for it. So that's localization. If you do enjoy this content, feel free to subscribe. I thoroughly would enjoy to provide you more and better content, and keep moving forward if this is what interests you. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.